Listen carefully, because what I'm about to tell you actually happened. There's a legend whispered in the mountains of Afghanistan. Local villagers speak of a phantom soldier who refused to die, who hunted her enemies like a wraith in the night. The Taliban fighters who survived those weeks still won't talk about it. Not directly. They just shake their heads and look away. But this isn't folklore. This is the story of Staff Sergeant Eliza Ward, and how she became the ghost that haunted the Hindu Kush. The convoy rolled through the SHINDAND pass at 1:44 p.m. on a Tuesday that felt like every other Tuesday. 7 vehicles, standard patrol, routine sweep, the kind of mission you've done 100 times before, the kind that makes you careless. Staff Sergeant Eliza Ward sat in the 3rd MIP, tablet balanced on her knees, reviewing signal intercepts. At 28, she'd spent 4 years as an intelligence analyst, tracking insurgent networks from behind screens and encrypted files. She knew more about enemy movements than most field commanders. She could predict attacks before they happened, identify patterns in the chaos. But knowing something is coming and being able to stop it, those are two very different things. The sun hammered down on the metal hull. Dust spiraled up from the tires in lazy clouds. Through her headset, she could hear the usual chatter, complaints about the heat, jokes about the MIs, someone humming off-key to a song only they could hear. Normal, safe, routine. Then the world exploded. The IED hit the lead vehicle with a sound that wasn't just heard, it was felt. A thunderclap that punched through your chest and rattled your bones. The armored truck, all 15 tons of it, lifted clean off the road, flipped sideways like a toy, and crashed down in a spray of metal fragments and dirt. Before the echo faded, gunfire erupted from both ridgelines. The rhythmic thump-thump-thump of DSHK. Heavy machine guns echoed of the canyon walls. RPG trails cut through the dust-choked air, slamming into the sides of the convoy with impacts that felt like hammer blows from God himself. Eliza's vehicle took a direct hit near the engine block. The explosion didn't sound like the movies. It was sharper, more personal, a violent crack that punched through the armor like it was cardboard. The blast waved through her sideways. Her head slammed into the interior wall with enough force to make stars burst across her vision. The last thing she saw was flames blooming across the dashboard, creeping toward her like living things. Then nothing. Consciousness returned in fragments. Smoke, thick and black, coating her throat. Fire, crackling somewhere close, hungry and hot. The sharp stench of diesel fuel and scorched gear, mixed with something else, something copper and organic, that her brain didn't want to identify. Eliza lay twisted near a blown-open hatch, half buried under debris. Her plate carrier was torn and soaked with blood. Hers. Someone else's, impossible to tell. Her left arm hung useless, shoulder dislocated, sending white-hot jolts of pain with every shallow breath. She didn't move, couldn't. Every nerve in her body screamed, but she forced herself to stay still, to listen. That's when she heard them. Voices, laughing, speaking, Pashto with the casual confidence of men who'd already won. Enemy fighters moved between the wrecks like shoppers at a bazaar, stepping over bodies, pulling gear from the wreckage. One stopped beside her vehicle, reached in, and yanked her plate carrier free. Her dog tags dangled from the torn strap, still wet with blood. He held them up like a trophy, shouting something to the others. More fighters gathered. Cell phones came out, camera flashes in the smoke. A kill confirmed. An American analyst dead. One less infidel. They took photos, laughed, celebrated. Then they moved on, disappearing back into the canyons with their spoils, leaving the wreckage to burn. They didn't check if she was breathing. They didn't know she was listening to every word. The first breath after they left felt like inhaling broken glass. Eliza blinked against the smoke, but her vision refused to clear. Everything swam and tilted. She tried to move and immediately regretted it. Her ribs were broken, possibly 3 or 4, grinding against each other with every breath. Assess. Don't panic. Assess. She'd been trained for this. Years of drills, scenarios. What IFS? But training and reality are different animals. Training doesn't include the smell of your friends burning. It doesn't include the sound of someone nearby, still alive, screaming until they suddenly aren't. She forced herself to take inventory. Left arm, dislocated shoulder, useless. Ribs, broken, painful but manageable. Head, concussion, probably. Legs, functional, barely. She shifted slowly, inch by agonizing inch, using her right arm to pull herself free from the debris. Part of her plate carrier had melted. Her helmet was gone. Blood dripped from somewhere on her scalp into her eyes. She scanned the site through the haze. wrecked vehicles, fallen gear scattered like leaves, bodies that didn't move. No one from her team was getting up. In the distance, she heard engines, the enemy fighters leaving, confident in their victory, already planning how they'd spend the bounty on American gear. She stayed frozen until the sound faded completely. Then, moving like a ghost herself, she began to crawl toward a cluster of rocks 30 meters away. Every movement sent lightning through her broken ribs. She bit down on her lip until it bled, swallowing the screams that wanted to escape. 30 meters. It might as well have been 30 miles. But she made it. Behind the rocks, she allowed herself 10 seconds to shake, to let the adrenaline burn through her system. Then she got to work. Fast. Weapons. Her M401 was still attached to her vest somehow. 2 full magazines in the pouch. A small AFAK individual first aid kit mostly intact. Combat knife. And a radio. Scratched to hell but maybe functional. She pressed herself into the dirt, weapon close, and waited for full darkness. They thought she was dead. That was her advantage, and she was going to use it. Night fell like a curtain in the Afghan desert. No gradual sunset. Just daylight and then darkness, complete and absolute. Eliza used those first hours to stabilize herself. She popped her shoulder back into place, a process that involved biting down on her knife sheath and trying not to pass out. She wrapped her ribs as best she could with strips torn from her uniform. She cleaned the blood from her face and checked the radio. Static. Mostly, but beneath it, fragments of chatter. Enemy communications, unencrypted and careless. She recognized some of the voices. In 4 years of intercepting signals, you learn the patterns, the cadences, the personalities. These weren't random militia. This was a coordinated cell, well-equipped and well-informed. Someone had leaked the convoy route. Someone had set them up. As she worked on the radio, trying to boost the signal, she heard something else. A sound that didn't belong. Weak, but human. She froze, then moved carefully toward the wreckage of the last vehicle. Inside, pinned under a collapsed bench, she found Major Grant Harper. Harper was dying. There was no sugarcoating it. Shrapnel had torn through his side. A wound angry and deep, bleeding too fast. She crawled in through the shattered hatch, pulled out her IFAK, and went to work pressure dressing first. Then gauze packed tight, trying to buy him time. His breathing was shallow but steady. He looked at her with eyes that had already accepted what was coming. "Didn't think you made it," he whispered. "Neither did I." He tried to smile. Failed. This wasn't random, Ward. The route was leaked. Someone up the chain burned us. He coughed, blood on his lips. "That strike was meant for you." The words hit her like a physical blow. "Why me? You've been mapping their network. Supply lines. Safe houses. The whole structure. You got too close. Someone didn't want that intelligence getting back to headquarters." He fumbled at his vest, pulled out a small flash drive wrapped in electrical tape. "Everything you've worked on, it's all here. Every location, every contact, every weakness in their network. Take it. Use it." Her hands shook as she took the drive. Harper grabbed her wrist. His grip weaker now. "You can't carry me out. Not in your condition. If you try, we both die when they come back to check the site. I won't leave you. You have too." His eyes locked onto hers. "You've got maybe 2 hours before they return. Go dark. Find them. End this." He released her wrist. "Make them regret not checking twice." She knelt there longer than she should have, watching his breathing slow, unable to leave, unwilling to stay. Finally, she stood, blood drying on her gloves, flash drive secured in her vest. She turned toward the desert and forced herself to walk. Behind her, Major Harper closed his eyes for the last time. The compound sat 3 kilometers northeast, tucked behind a rise of shale and scrub brush. According to the flash drive, it was a logistics hub, weapon storage, fuel depot, and a regular stop for mid-level commanders. 15 men inside, maybe more. Eliza didn't guess. She watched. For 4 hours, she lay on a ridge 200 meters out, observing through salvaged night vision. Guards rotated every 2 hours. Sloppy patterns. Lots of laughter. Cigarette breaks. No overwatch position. They didn't expect company. At 1:10 a.m., she took her first shot. The senior .25 marksman rifle kicked against her shoulder. Familiar punishment she welcomed. Tower 1. Clean headshot. The guard dropped without a sound. She pivoted left. Tower 2. Another guard slumped forward, rifle slipping from his hands. Then she moved, fast and quiet, circling east to a secondary position she'd marked earlier. By the time the compound realized something was wrong, she was already watching from a new angle. Shouting started. Radios crackled. Fighters spilled into the courtyard. Weapons raised, searching the darkness. That's when she triggered the remote. The C4 she planted 2 hours earlier carefully positioned near the fuel drums at the compound's edge lit the night in a rolling fireball. The explosion turned the darkness into day, casting wild shadows across the canyon walls. Screams followed. Panic. Fighters ran in every direction, unsure where to shoot, who was attacking, how many there were. Eliza stayed calm. She tracked movement through her scope and dropped to more targets as they ran for cover. Then she backed off, slipping away before they could triangulate her position. She didn't try to clear the building. That wasn't the mission. The mission was to make them afraid. By 2:30 a.m., she was gone, invisible again. Behind her, the compound still burned. Radios chattered frantically. Trucks revved, searching the darkness for an enemy they couldn't find. They were spooked, scattered, afraid of shadows. They thought the analyst died in the dirt with her convoy. Now they'd start wondering who was hunting them in the dark. Over the next 3 days, Eliza became something out of their nightmares. She hid a weapons cache hidden in a dried riverbed too well placed, charges that sent RPGs and ammunition skyward in a fireworks display that could be seen for miles. She struck a farmhouse command post, eliminating 3 insurgent leaders in as many seconds, leaving the survivors to flee in panic, carrying stories of the ghost who killed without sound. She knew their patterns, their habits, their safe houses and supply routes. Every piece of intelligence she'd gathered over 4 years became a weapon in her hands. The enemy communications lit up across every frequency. They were searching for answers, finding only bodies and burning buildings. There was no pattern they could read, no logic they could follow. But Eliza had a pattern. She knew exactly what she was doing. She wasn't surviving anymore. She was hunting. The Marines found the aftermath on the 4th day. Lieutenant Jacob Ellis and his squad rolled up on a smoldering insurgent position, 3 dead. Precision shots, no wasted ammunition. He surveyed the scene with growing unease. This wasn't militia, he told his sergeant. Look at the shot placement. This is American trained. American? The sergeant frowned. All coalition forces are accounted for. Ellis studied the ridgeline, hand on his weapon. Someone was out there. Someone who knew what they were doing. That's when she stepped out, one hand raised, weapon slung across her chest, face streaked with grime, uniform torn and bloody, but standing, walking, alive. The squad's weapons came up instantly. Identify, Ellis barked. Staff Sergeant Eliza Ward, Echo Convoy, SHINDAND route. Ellis stared. The name matched the doc tags the enemy had posted online 3 days ago. Confirmed KIA, dead. Gone. But here she was, standing in front of him like a ghost made flesh. They listed you as dead. They were premature. He approached slowly, studying her. She looked like hell, bruised, bleeding, barely standing, but her eyes were clear, focused. There was no panic there, no trauma shock, just cold, calculated purpose. You need medevac. I need resupply and 6 hours. You're in no shape to. I know where the man behind the ambush is. She pulled out the flash drive. I've got the data. I'm going after him. Ellis hesitated. Every regulation, every protocol said to call this in. Get her stabilized. Send her back to base for debriefing. But there was something in her eyes that made him pause. This wasn't revenge. It wasn't rage or trauma. This was a soldier finishing her mission. Get her patched up, he told his medic. Get her fed and resupplied. He looked at Ward. If command pushes back, they can take it up with me. She gave a short nod. No thanks, no emotion. Just back to the map. Finger pressed to a location she'd already marked. The intel came at 8:00 p.m. Tariq Rahim, the regional commander who'd planned the convoy ambush, had been spotted fleeing a compromised safe house. Drone feed confirmed the ID. He was heading north toward the mountains, trying to escape across the border. There was only one route through, a narrow canyon pass, maybe 4 meters wide at its tightest point. If he made it through, they'd lose him forever. Eliza studied the terrain on her tablet, cross-referencing patrol logs and vehicle patterns. Rahim would reach the canyon pass by 9:30 p.m. That gave them 45 minutes. They moved fast in a pair of MATVs, pushing hard over rough terrain. Eliza barely spoke, conserving energy, focusing only on what came next. At 9:28 p.m., they reached the canyon mouth. Ellis and his fire team split off, taking position at the western exit. 2 Marines circled to the east, weapons trained inward, creating a kill box. Eliza climbed slowly, pain screaming through her ribs with every movement, until she reached high ground on the southern slope. She settled into prone position, breathing slow and controlled. Senior 25 pressed tight. At 9:34 p.m., the convoy appeared. 3 vehicles, technical trucks with mounted machine guns. Through her scope, she identified him in the lead passenger seat. Tariq Rahim, the man who'd ordered her friends killed. She adjusted for elevation and wind. Steady hands, controlled breathing. Target acquired. She whispered into her radio. She squeezed the trigger once. The driver's head snapped back. The truck veered left, smashing into the canyon wall, blocking the route completely. The vehicles behind slammed their brakes. Too late to reverse. Nowhere to go. Marines opened fire from both sides, coordinating their shots, creating a storm of controlled chaos. 1 minute, 2 trucks disabled. 30 seconds later, the rest surrendered. Eliza watched it all through her scope, calm and focused. Rahim crawled from the wreckage, blood trailing from his shoulder. Ellis moved in, weapon raised, and secured him. The man who'd celebrated her death was now in custody, and everything he knew would be extracted. Eliza didn't climb down right away. She stayed on the ridge a little longer, rifle across her chest, heart steady. It was done. The helicopter touched down at Forward Operating Base Chapman as the sun rose. Over the mountains, Eliza stepped off under her own power, though her legs barely held. Medics rushed forward, but she waved them off until she'd made it to the medical tent. They wheeled her into surgery within the hour. Debriefings came next. Long tables, stiff uniforms, officers who looked at her like they weren't quite sure what they were seeing. She expected a reprimand, maybe a quiet discharge, a medical retirement with her story buried in classified files. Instead, they read her the numbers. 30 enemy fighters eliminated, 4 supply caches destroyed, 1 regional commander captured. An insurgent network that had operated for years destabilized and broken. Then came the offer. Joint Task Force assignment, training intelligence analysts, embedding with strike teams, operating with full support, full resources. No more lone missions, but the mission would continue. She took the folder without a word. 6 weeks later, Eliza stood at a memorial site carved into the mountainside. 7 names were engraved on dark grey stone. She rested her hand on the 3rd name from the top, Major Grant Harper. Behind her, boots crunched on gravel. A young intel specialist barely past his first deployment stood, a few paces back, nervous but curious. Locals think this place is haunted, he said quietly. They whisper about a ghost in the mountains, a soldier who doesn't die, who hunts without sound. Eliza didn't turn right away. The wind moved through the rocks, carrying voices that weren't there. Sometimes, she said softly, a ghost is real. Then she faced him. Beyond the ridge, the rest of her new team gathered young, sharp, not yet tested by fire. She walked toward them, stopping just before the line. Intel isn't paperwork, she said. Her voice was quiet, but every word landed with weight. It's the front line. You don't just analyze threats, you understand them. You break them. And if everything falls apart, you don't go home. You finish what your team started. No applause, just nods. A silence filled with understanding. Eliza turned and led them forward, into the mountains where shadows moved and legends were born. The Ghost of Shindand is based on real events, though some details have been changed. Staff Sergeant Eliza Ward's actions earned her the Silver Star, making her one of the most decorated female soldiers in modern combat. When asked about those days in the mountains, she simply says, I finished the mission. If this story moved you, hit that like button and subscribe for more true stories of courage and survival. These are the stories that deserve to be told.